Good afternoon, Alex.
Hello, Sean. How are you?
I'm very well, and yourself?
Yeah, I'm really good. Good to see you. Good to see you.
And
Under
you?
strange circumstances, but nevertheless, nice to see you.
So, thanks ever so much for agreeing to join us for this set of interviews that we're doing, that we've labelled the Datafiltr interviews.
You're welcome.
Obviously, this will be shown to our sort of growing number of users. But before we start, maybe it's a good idea if you just introduce yourself, which institution you're from, and maybe a little bit about the role that you perform within your team.
Sure. So I'm Alex Hardie. I'm head of student recruitment at Keele University, and broadly speaking, I'm responsible for UK recruitment. So I have a counterpart who oversees international, but I look after UK. So and we're also responsible for some widening participation elements. But the core elements of my role are really that schools liaison piece and the core student recruitment activity.
Okay. So sort of how big is the team?
We're relatively small compared with the sector. So just in my immediate team, from boots on the ground, as it were, there are only another 4 of us. So we're spread pretty thin in terms of what we have to do. Yeah, we get quite a lot done with not very many of us.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, so we're sort of really in unprecedented times. I think this is day 33 of the lockdown. Obviously.
Is it? I'm glad you're keeping count. I definitely lost count.
Yeah. No, I had to do a count yesterday when we were doing another interview. So I know we're definitely on day 33. And just from talking to our contacts, you know, the workplace is almost turned upside down. So probably the biggest change for all of us is the fact that we've had to move from an office to sort of home working environment. So just from your perspective, maybe if you just, you know, how's it affected you personally? How's it affected the team?
It's a really interesting question, because I'm sure many of my colleagues that might be watching this are having the same kind of challenges. But initially, I think we would be atypical as far as the immediate response to this, because let's face it was completely unprecedented. Nobody saw what was coming. And initially, there was a little bit of uncertainty, a little bit of trepidation about what was coming. And then quite quickly, and I'm very thankful for having such a positive team, really, that we quickly started to view it actually as an opportunity. Now I say that with love, because of course this is a really difficult situation for a lot of people, and it's affecting a lot of lives. So I don't want to understate that. However, speaking from the point of view of what the outputs of our roles are, we quickly realized that this was going to give us a chance to do some of the things that we find are a bit of a stretch based on the small team that we are. Yeah. So we are, as I said before, primarily a boots on the ground team. So we're the face-to-face team. We do have some digital output as far as the team is concerned as well, but the vast majority of our output was face-to-face. So that initial adjustment was a little bit difficult, in that the team is used to the face-to-face activity that they do. So there were initially a number of challenges, just rudimentary day-to-day challenges, like we're going to be working from home now, and what's that going to look like, and what's the IT provision for that, and we're learning Microsoft Teams really quickly, and now I'm finding that I'm going to a lot of Zoom meetings and those kinds of things. Yeah. But actually, I mean, talking about some of the real positives from those transitions, I mean, certainly there are fewer distractions. Now that's a personal comment, because I'll confess to being easily distracted in the office. So being able to work from my bedroom as I speak to you now was actually a bit of a blessing for me. And there was the opportunity, of course, as well, to be able to, as I said, do things that we haven't done. A lot of my team, there's an immediate live project at the moment as we approach the UCAS rollover on the 5th of May. They're all working very hard to make sure that the course pages are up to date, and of course there are hundreds of those on the Keele website.
Yeah.
And then we're also welcoming the introduction of new technologies. So UniBuddy springs to mind as a really good example, because for some time I've been a huge advocate of their product, but not actually a customer. So been really, really keen to get my paws on that, because of all the benefits it brings, I think, for mentoring, for student recruitment, and a whole host of other things. So it was brilliant that all of a sudden there was a march on getting that done quickly. We managed to turn that around in a really short period of time, and we're already seeing enormous benefit from that. So that was really, really good. So I'd like to think, Sean, that we're a pretty positive thinking team, and as a result we're able to see the silver linings, although it might be difficult sometimes.
Yeah, I think certainly a lot of feedback I've had is that working from home doesn't suit everyone, basically, doesn't it? So I think there's a small proportion of people that are just struggling to sort of get used to the flow. But you've given us some great benefits there. So how long did it take you to implement UniBuddy, for example? Was that a relatively quick
I think we managed to turn it around in a couple of days, and I have to give credit to a number of different people for that. So Laura Ewens at UniBuddy, who I think is saving everyone's life right now, you can quote me on that, is doing an absolutely wonderful job.
She was a regular user of our platform, so we were actually sorry to see her leave from her last role.
She's been really, really superb, and the level of patience she's had for many a dumb question that we've sent her way has been really great as well. And then there was also our own team, because of course we wanted to activate it. We would normally have gone with a slightly softer launch in lieu of a bigger launch, but actually it was a let's get it done type situation we were in. And then there were lots of people, Steve Mail, who's my counterpart in marketing, and Cheryl Belford, who's one of our senior designer, really pulled stuff around pretty quickly, along with Paul Newton, who's our associate director of web and media. So there were a lot of people that came together to make that happen. And looking for those small wins in this very odd situation, it felt really good to be able to say, well, look what can happen if we really need to make it happen. So I think there's a lot of collaboration there, which was a word I was going to try not to use today, because I think it's banded around a lot. But I think we're all quickly acclimatizing to a very different way of working, and I'm proud of how well the team's responded to it, actually.
Yeah. So you've almost preempted the second part I was going to go on to, which, I mean, what would you say the lessons you've learned so far? Just purely in terms of how do you feel that internal communication actually has improved in these sort of strange circumstances?
Yeah, well, I think we've definitely developed. I mean, we're pretty good at having a focus on what we need to do and what we need to achieve. But I think it's fair to say that this has really given us laser focus on what's important. And one of the biggest wins that we've had actually is really helping colleagues around the university who perhaps aren't as close to marketing recruitment as we are, although we're trying to embed a culture of responsibility and culpability actually for recruitment and marketing, is that chance to really help demonstrate the cycle. So you and I, Sean, talk about the cycle all the time, but that's not necessarily words that are on the lips of our colleagues all the time. So even simple things like running 2 cohorts at one time, so considering conversion for 2020, which, as you know, that's narrowing with every passing day, even though we've been given the extended confirmation deadline by UCAS, that's getting smaller and smaller. But we're also looking ahead, of course, to 2021, which we're already months and months into recruiting. I mean, at Keele, we tend to, our line in the sand, if you like, tends to be in February when the new prospectus lands, and then we're recruiting for 2021 cycle, as was. But of course, as you know only too well, the wheels fell off that relatively early as far as the face-to-face stuff was concerned. So we needed to move pretty quickly. Now, we're not a university with enormously deep pockets. So we do a little with the other way around. We do a lot with a little, and that's hard, but we have to make our money go a long way. But to just to pick up on your point about communication, I think it's been generally good. I think certainly within our team, because we have distinct groups within the recruitment and marketing function, and we worked pretty well already anyway. But I think we're just really sort of doubling down on that and getting even better at it. And there are good examples, I'm pleased to report, of us working well with other corners of the university as well. And I think it's fair to say that by and large, there's a really good understanding of what it is that is needed of everybody. So what's important as far as our conversion plans are for now into this year's intake, and then looking ahead to next September as well.
Yeah. So that leads me very nicely onto the next question. So have you already discussed or put plans in place about what your strategy may be post September? We obviously don't know as we speak today what the plans are in terms of schools returning, but let's keep our fingers crossed and hope that life returns to a bit of normality, I think, by September. Have you put plans in place already?
Well, most of our focus at the moment is looking ahead to A-level results day, of course. That is a big part of our thinking at the moment, and has to be. But yes, and I can't speak so much for my colleagues over in digital and brand, but from a pure recruitment point of view, we're anticipating, and as you say, we don't know, but I would like to hope that there might be some kinds of physical events before the end of the year. I think there's some interesting conversation going around, particularly with some important stakeholders, the likes of Helloa, around what events might look like. And there's we were talking, my colleagues and I, this morning about some of the interesting conversations around whether or not certain event venues are going to be the right places for events, that kind of thing, if those events go ahead. And then bigger conversations about the value of face-to-face events. I tend to feel that we would, I don't want to say throw the baby out with the bathwater, if we were going to start to talk about the value of face-to-face, because because I think the value of face-to-face is indisputable. I mean, of course, I would say that as a student recruitment person, but I don't see how we could, as a sector, when we're talking about the sums of money that are involved and the level of commitment that's involved from students, not having a face-to-face interaction with those students as part of the recruitment process. So I think we have a duty, and I know we'll perhaps come on to this a little bit later on, but I think we've got a duty as a profession to make sure that we inform our colleagues at every level, every stakeholder within our institutions, of the importance of that face-to-face contact. And that's before, Sean, we've even talked about widening access and how important that face-to-face work is when it comes to talking about giving fair access to higher education.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's difficult to predict the future, but obviously what I'm making a parallel with football here, but obviously part of the problem about football restarting is how can you allow that number of people to be in such close proximity? So I'm making that analogy with regards to, for example, UCAS events. We know that lots of UCAS events have had to cancel over the last we're currently in that period, aren't we, as we speak?
Yeah.
And I think there's talk of maybe shifting those to later on in the year, but it's debatable as to whether the government will actually allow that to happen in the first place. So has this had any impact on your open days, for example, or?
Yes, well, we're already moving to a virtual open day in June, which will be one of the first virtual open days that we have run. And so we're working with a company who are helping us to produce that content. And we know, and Unibuddy has really helped us understand that. Actually, we know that there is, of course, a big appetite for students to be able to have some kind of experience. And it will, again, it'll be completely unprecedented. It's fair to say that as a university, we haven't done too much in the way of virtual events, because we've spent a lot of our time making sure that what we do is really drive prospective students and applicants to come and visit our campus. Now, of course, an outside observer would say, well, you guys perhaps are a little bit vulnerable in that respect because you didn't have any online provision prior, and that would be a fair accusation to make. But I think what we have done is been pretty responsive in getting that together. And again, credit has to go to colleagues like Steve Mail for starting to pull that together, because it's, as you know, a massive undertaking to deliver an online experience like that. Will it ever be as good as seeing the whites of somebody's eyes? I'd argue not, but again, you would expect me to. But I think certainly people want to have some kind of experience. And ultimately, Sean, if we want to talk about the kind of experience that our potential students have, then it comes back to them remembering us and having an experience that makes them feel something. And I think if they feel something, then we stand a fighting chance of them making us their firm choice for university.
Yeah. Yeah, I attended one of the webinars that's been put on by a fairly large provider in that area, and I think there was about 1,500 kids that joined in the session, both via Zoom and sort of YouTube, and so that was very sort of reassuring, I think, for a lot of universities who may be worried not only about the current cohort who should start this year, but as you say, reaching those year 12s who are sort of in the very early stages of that decision-making process. And
I think, if I may, sorry to interrupt you there, Sean, but I think if there's something else that needs to be addressed there, is that this air of mystique that sometimes universities have, particularly, particularly red bricks that are, where there is an air of mystique around them. I think if you're able to have dialogue with your university, then that really helps in terms of giving students a level of comfort to know that they're making the right decision. And I think that's so important, that we are contactable and approachable and all those kinds of things. And that was one of the big reasons for really pushing hard on the Unibuddy product, was to really give prospective students and applicants the opportunity to connect with us in a completely unfiltered way that would allow them to ask what they needed. Because I firmly believe that having that contact and that immediacy and that approach really does help to make a difference with student decision making.
Well, you'll be well prepared for clearing this year, which is one good thing, won't you? By the time that comes around.
Yes, so, well, we hope so. And therein lies a question in itself, Sean. I mean, what is clearing going to look like? I mean, we did receive an email from a partner sixth form college this week, asking us, what that was going to be like. And of course, the answer is, pretty much more of the same. But the real difference is going to be around the ways in which I think the minds of prospective students are going to be working. I mean, there's no way to understate the sort of psychological influence that the situation we find ourselves has had. I mean, I see data coming out of UCAS that says that 85% of students are not going to be making a different decision based on what they see and they're experiencing currently. But that other 15% still represents 50,000 plus students who may be thinking about doing something different entirely. Now, whether or not that means they're kicking on to the next year, or that they're considering whether or not they want a university experience full stop, is another conversation. But I think it would be unwise for us to just assume that everything will be the same as it's always been. I mean, this is something that, as I say, totally unprecedented, that we couldn't really have ever properly planned for.
No, I agree. Well, look, I'm going to finish off just by asking you very quickly. That I read an article recently on Wonky where the author was suggesting that the whole sector should sit back and consider what it's doing post COVID-19. And one of the things she raised was the fact that she was trying to encourage universities not to go to UCAS events and perhaps replace them. I think she made some suggestions. But what are your own personal views? I think that's maybe a bit extreme, because I agree with you. I think there still needs to be a bit of face-to-face. But how do you think the sector could work more collaboratively, particularly in regarding the work sort of delivered by marketing or student recruitment teams?
I think we've and I feel like I may have touched on this point already, but I think we've got a duty of care to our colleagues around our respective institutions to make sure that that we don't disregard face-to-face as a tactic for recruitment and for engagement, because I think that yes, there will certainly be a portion of the audience who, at the very impressionable age that they're at, they will be tempted to never want to set foot in an exhibition hall ever again. I'm certain there will be a percentage of those people who feel that way. That being said, I feel that the vast majority will not feel that way, and actually we will be returning to normality, quote unquote, at some point in the future. But I think we've got to be very, very careful about suggesting that everything we must do in light of COVID-19 is take that entirely online. I think that's a bit of a reductive argument. I think that it completely overlooks what we are as human beings, without sounding too silly about it. You know, we need to be face-to-face. We need to have those kinds of conversations. And let me be clear about this. I'm not suggesting that we should do that right now or until we are told that it is safe to do so. I'm just looking to a time when we are in a position to do that. And I think that it would be a terrible shame to remove that point of difference that we're able to offer by having that face-to-face interaction.
Well, luckily our platform might provide you with some of the answers, because you'll have periods of doing lots of face-to-face in your historical data, as well as periods of now going totally digital. So that's great. Well, listen, can I thank you ever so much for your time and for your views. This will be the first of a sort of series, so you're one of our first guests on board. So thank you again for all your time. I'm just going to finish off by putting up my slide, and I'm sure you and I will talk again very soon.
Look forward to it.
And yeah, all the best in the projects that you're currently running.
Thank you. Great to talk to you.
Okay.
All the best. See you.